If you've spent any time in the health and longevity space, I'm sure you've heard of the amino acid leucine and its most recent claims to fame in the protein world. Which makes sense because it is a building block of protein. But specifically, all of the hype has been around the fact that this essential amino acid acts as the main catalyst for triggering growth pathways such as muscle protein synthesis, or the all-important process that maintains our all-important structural self, keeping us able and capable all throughout life, especially later on, which is kind of important for that longevity thing you probably care about if you've stumbled across this channel. But I'm here to tell you today that Leucine secrets may very well go deeper than that, tickling the efficiency of one of the foundational components of all things complex life. Yep, we've got some protein tickling on the docket today, and I for one could not be more excited about it. Let's go. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. All right, as always, let's dive right in, because this was some really cool research to nerd out on. Mainly because, as I alluded to in the intro, leucine has always been talked about as a muscle protein synthesis signal. Thus why, as we've covered in previous powwows like this one, you want to aim for at least 25 grams of protein per meal to adequately trigger this critical process and put your body in a position to build and maintain its structural self. However, this new, hot on the scientific streets research suggests there may be some novel, a fancy scientific word for new, and potentially energy-shattering mechanisms at play here as well. So, let's see if the hype is justified. Researchers out of the University of Cologne in Germany just identified a nutrient-responsive mechanism where leucine suppresses ubiquitin-dependent degradation of outer mitochondrial membrane proteins. Yeah, wild, right? Oh, you want me to elaborate? Of course. And don't worry, I had no clue what that initially meant either, so we'll learn together, because it is significant. And I'll tell you why. The translation of all that gibberish is, they found leucine plays a key role in strengthening the function and efficiency of the most critical piece of biological machinery that we all have, our mitochondria, making them more resilient and able to do their job, aka synthesize the critical energy of life, ATP, and provide key cellular signaling functions, which, if you've been around these parts, know is kind of a big deal. Like Ron Burgundy, big deal.
I'm kind of a big deal.
And let me attempt to break down how leucine actually does this, at least based off this research team's observations. Your mitochondria have an outer membrane covered with proteins that basically control everything. Protein import, metabolite transport, fission, fusion, all of the important energy regulating and signaling stuff. Stuff that the cell needs to function, or it's night-night. And normally, these proteins get tagged with a compound called ubiquitin that puts it on a list for degradation by something called a proteasome, which you can think of as a protein garbage truck in charge of quality control. Now, as we go about our lives, and for a number of different reasons, one being aging, but more realistically, lifestyle-driven disease and nutrient deficiencies, mitochondrial protein turnover tends to accelerate, leading to more dysfunctional, inefficient mitochondria, which means less energy, more inflammation, and an exacerbated rate of biological aging. Not cool. I know. However, when more leucine enters the picture, the pathways which promote this degradation become dampened, and as a byproduct, the key outer mitochondrial membrane becomes stabilized, resulting in mitochondrial proteome expansion and ultimately enhanced mitochondrial respiration, which is good for energy synthesizing biological business. Translation, when leucine walks into the mitochondrial membrane, it says, hey, we've got nutrients and amino acids. Let's keep this mitochondria functioning efficiently. Super rad of them. I know. And this was observed in both C. elegans, which are tiny little worms which have an eerie similarity to our biology, and human lung cells in vitro, outside the body, where leucine increased mitochondrial respiration within 3 hours of exposure. Pretty damn cool. Now, that being said, just like all things in biology, the potential for a double-edged sword does exist. Because as you could imagine, these degradation processes do have their place, specifically to prevent the accumulation of damaged proteins, which happens to be an essential task for long-term cellular vitality. So, you don't want to just be going out of your way to force-feed yourself leucine just for the sake of it. However, since it is a widely and poorly kept secret that most people, especially women, do not consume the ideal amount of daily protein for optimal human function, which is around 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight a day, significantly higher than the recommended daily allowance, or RDA, a number which represents the minimum recommended amount to prevent a biological deficiency rather than optimize the human body. This research only piles on to those reasons to prioritize protein and this nutrient, and make sure that you are getting enough naturally through that real food stuff, giving your body the right resources to carry out all those complex processes that we have the liberty of not having to think about. Thank God. Regulating them in an ideal and optimal balance. And in the case that you are new here, healthy, efficient mitochondria are a prerequisite for a healthy, efficient you. Their function is literally tracked back to every single aspect of your health, because you need energy for this living thing. So if you are not living a mitochondrial optimized lifestyle comprised of regular badonkadonking, high quality sleep, toxin avoidance, less stress, more nature, and real whole food protein and phytonutrient eating, you're doing your daily mood, feel, function, cognition, and long-term longevity a disservice. Plain and simple, which will also make feeling how you're capable of feeling biologically impossible. Not cool for longevity school. I know. Oh, and I can't not give you the reminder that moving after your protein consumption actually helps it get absorbed into your cells, as we covered here. So don't forget that post-meal walk for your mitochondria. With that, if you want to start checking off at least one of these boxes, here are some of the best sources of leucine on the market. And who would have thunk? They're all real whole foods. First, we've got our animal sources, which are the highest in natural leucine content. Think wild, organic, and grass-fed beef, chicken, salmon, eggs, dairy, and protein supplements like whey, with some very capable plant alternatives being beans, legumes, lentils, quinoa, and nuts. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a threshold you want to aim for, specifically 25 to 30 grams of higher quality protein per meal, which will translate to around 1.5 to 3.5 grams of leucine per meal. So keep that in mind when you're planning your fuel intake. And remember, this is not just about muscle anymore. This is some foundational for biological business stuff we're talking about. Mitochondria, function, and prosperity. So lock in with that high quality grub and those lifestyle habits, because there ain't no thriving when those mitochondria ain't vibing. And if you were wondering, no, that wasn't in the script. My brain mitochondria just ad-libbed it. Yeah, you heard that right. No corny one-liners without healthy mitochondria. You've been warned.